Kalen's knuckles were white on the control yoke of the skimmer, the worn leather creaking under his grip. Outside, the twin sons of Xylos painted the desert in a violent, orange and gold wash, baking the cracked earth into a mosaic of heat and shadow. Ahead, the skeletal remains of the colony's first wave lay scattered, machines rusted into silence, habitats half buried by sand. This was his world now, a beautiful, brutal frontier, and his job was to keep it breathing. The comms crackled to life, a voice tight with static. Kalen, status on the eastern aquifer. The primary pump's gone dark again. It was Alara, her voice a familiar anchor in the chaos. On my way, he growled, banking the skimmer hard. The machine groaned in protest, its repulsors straining against the dunes. He wasn't a soldier. He was a mechanic, a farmer, a survivor. But out here, survival was a war fought with wrenches and willpower, and the enemy was the endless, uncaring sky itself. He just hoped the sky wasn't about to get a lot more crowded. The aquifer pump was a dead thing, its metal shell scorched and split. Kalen knelt in the sand, the heat seeping through his thick work pants. He ran a diagnostic, the screen flashing a cascade of red errors. Power surge overload, he muttered, tracing a melted conduit with a gloved finger. This wasn't just wear and tear. This was sabotage. He stood, squinting at the horizon, and saw it. A silhouette, sharp and angular against the suns, gliding high above the dunes. A Varen scout. The avians had been watching them for weeks, their presence a silent, menacing pressure. Kalen's blood ran cold. They hadn't made contact, not officially. But their patrols were bolder, their territorial displays more aggressive. He keyed his comm. Alara, I've got a Varen over the eastern ridge. I'm heading back to the settlement. Bring the big gun. The response was a tense, static-filled burst of confirmation. He didn't need to be told twice. The Varen didn't understand frontier life. They only understood dominance, and Kalen had no intention of letting them dominate his home. Alara was already waiting, a heavy pulse rifle cradled in her arms. Her face was a mask of grim determination, her eyes fixed on the same point in the sky. He's coming in low, she said, her voice steady. Kalen nodded, his own rifle now in hand. The settlement was a cluster of domes and prefabs, huddled together like frightened animals. It was a vulnerable target, and they both knew it. They want us to run, Kalen said, his voice low. They want us to show fear. Alara's jaw tightened. We won't give them that. The Varen descended, a sleek, predatory shape of polished obsidian and chrome. It landed 50 meters away, its 6 limbs folding gracefully. From its back, a figure unfolded, tall and clad in ceremonial armor that gleamed under the twin suns. It was a Kaeldar, a warrior caste Varen. It raised a taloned hand, and a translator unit crackled to life. This territory is claimed, it stated, its voice a chilling, synthesized monotone. You are trespassers. Leave, or be removed. Kalen took a step forward, his rifle held loosely at his side. This land is ours, he said, his voice carrying across the sand. We have a charter. The Galactic Accord grants us colonization rights. The Kaeldar tilted its head, a gesture that was both avian and unnervily human. The Accord is a relic of weak species. The Varen are the architects of order. Your chaotic presence is a blight. Alara shifted her weight, her finger tightening on the trigger. We're not leaving, she said, her voice hard. The Kaeldar's gaze flickered to her, then back to Kalen. Then you will be the first example of our resolve. It raised a hand, and a shimmering energy field began to coalesce around its arm. Kalen's mind raced. A fight here would level the settlement. They were outmatched, outgunned, and out of options. He saw the fear in Alara's eyes, the same fear he felt. But he also saw something else. He saw the stubborn pride of humanity, the refusal to be broken. He had to find another way. He lowered his rifle. Wait, he said, holding up a hand. The Kaeldar paused, its head cocked in curiosity. What could you possibly offer that is worth your lives? Kalen took another step, his eyes locked on the aliens. We can offer you something you don't have. The Kaeldar's feathers ruffled, a sign of confusion or disdain. The Varen possess all that is necessary. We are perfect. Kalen almost laughed. Perfect. The most dangerous word in the galaxy. You're alone, he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. Up there, in your perfect society, you don't have partners, friends, beasts that choose you. The alien's expression was unreadable, but its posture stiffened. We have symbiotes. We have servants. We have order. Order isn't the same as bond, Kalen countered, gesturing towards the dunes. He knew the Varen saw other species as tools, as lesser beings. They couldn't comprehend the connection he had with the creatures of this world. I can prove it, he said, turning his back on the Kaeldar and walking a few paces away. He cupped his hands to his mouth and let out a low, trilling whistle, a sound he'd used since he'd first arrived on Xylos. The air was still for a moment. Then the ground began to tremble. From between two rock formations, a massive shape emerged. It was a Goliath, a six-legged, armored herbivore the size of a small house, its hide a patchwork of rock-like plates and thick, mossy fur. Its massive, intelligent eyes fixed on Kalen, and a low, rumbling sound rumbled from its chest. It was a sound of recognition, of friendship. The Kaeldar froze, its perfect composure shattered for the first time. It stared at the Goliath, its multifaceted eyes wide with something that might have been shock. That is a beast of burden. A lesser creature. It stammered, its translator unit glitching. Kalen placed a hand on the Goliath's massive, warm flank. His name is Boulder, he said softly, looking up at the towering creature. He's not my burden. He's my partner. The Goliath lowered its head, nuzzling Kalen's shoulder with surprising gentleness. Alara watched, a slow smile spreading across her face. She saw the flicker of understanding in the Varen's eyes, the first crack in its rigid worldview. The Kaeldar took a step back, its talons digging into the sand. This is a trick, a manipulation of simple creatures. It's not a trick, Alara said, stepping forward. It's trust, something your kind has forgotten how to build. The tension in the air was palpable, a wire pulled taut between two species. The Kaeldar's gaze darted between Kalen and the Goliath, then back to Alara. Its hand, which had been poised to unleash its energy weapon, slowly lowered. This connection is illogical, it finally said, its voice less certain. It is inefficient. It is weakness. Kalen met its gaze, unflinching. Maybe, he said, but it's our strength, and it's not going anywhere. The standoff ended not with a battle, but with a retreat. The Kaeldar gave one last, disdainful look at Kalen and the Goliath, then launched itself into the sky, disappearing into the glare of the suns. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the relief of the settlement's inhabitants and the low, contented rumble of Boulder. Kalen slumped against the Goliath's side, exhaustion washing over him. He had gambled everything on a principle the Varen couldn't comprehend, and he had won. For now, Alara walked over, her expression grim. They'll be back, Kalen. And next time, there won't be just one. He knew she was right. This was a reprieve, not a victory. The Varen didn't negotiate. They conquered, and humans were nothing if not conquerors. But Kalen's conquest would be different. He wouldn't take land. He would take minds. He looked up at Boulder, who was now gently grazing on a tough desert shrub. We need to show them more, he said, a plan forming in his mind. We need to show them what a real bond can do. Kalen's workshop was a cacophony of sound and smell, a testament to his ingenuity and the frontier's harsh realities. Scrap metal lay in piles, half-finished inventions cluttered every surface, and the air was thick with the ozone smell of welding and the sweet scent of exotic resins. Alara stood in the doorway, watching him as he worked. You're building something, she stated, more than asked. Kalen didn't look up from the complex web of wires and crystal he was soldering. The Varen think we're weak because we rely on each other. They think our bonds are a liability. He finally paused, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. I'm going to give them a liability they can't handle. He gestured to a large, empty space in the center of the room. I need you to find me the fastest, most agile creatures you can. Skitterers, stingwings, anything that can move and think on its feet. Alara's eyes widened slightly. You're going to try and talk to them? Bond with them all? Kalen gave her a grim smile. Not just bond. I'm going to build a network. A symphony. And when the Varen come back, I'm going to show them what harmony sounds like. The Varen attack came without warning. It wasn't a scout this time. It was a full-scale assault. 3 massive, biomechanical warships descended from the sky, their hulls pulsing with a malevolent, violet energy. They opened fire, not with lasers, but with sonic cannons that sent waves of pure, concussive force tearing across the desert. The settlement's shields flared, buckling under the relentless assault. Domes cracked, prefabs were torn apart, and the ground itself shuddered. Kalen was in the workshop, the sound of the attack a physical blow. He looked at the small, crystalline device in his hands, humming with a barely contained power. It was his last resort, a prototype he'd been working on for weeks. It was a resonator, designed to amplify and broadcast the unique biosignatures of the bonded creatures. It was a weapon of connection, not destruction. He had to get to the central spire, the highest point in the settlement. It was the only place with the range to broadcast his signal across the entire valley. He grabbed a satchel filled with smaller resonators and ran out into the chaos, the sound of destruction screaming all around him. The central spire was a wreck of shattered glass and twisted metal. Kalen climbed the crumbling stairs, his lungs burning, the sonic blast shaking the very foundations of the structure. He reached the top, the wind whipping sand into his face. Below, the Varen warships hovered like malevolent gods, their cannons pulsing with destructive energy. He could see Alara, pinned down behind a fallen girder, firing her rifle uselessly at the armored hulls. He had only one chance. He knelt, placing the large resonator on the ground. He pulled the satchel open and began activating the smaller ones, placing them in a circle around the central device. Each one pulsed with a different color, a different frequency. He closed his eyes, focusing, not on the destruction, but on the bonds. He thought of Boulder's rumble, of the skitterer's chittering, of the stingwing's high-pitched hum. He poured all of his will, all of his hope, into the machine. He slammed his palm onto the activation crystal. For a moment, there was silence. Then, a sound erupted from the resonators, a sound that had no name. It was a chorus of life, a symphony of 100 different species, all woven together into a single, overwhelming wave of pure, unadulterated connection. The sound washed over the Varen ships. Their hulls, designed for war, began to vibrate. Their systems, built for logic and order, were overwhelmed by the chaotic, beautiful noise of a frontier that refused to be conquered. The ships shuddered, their lights flickering, and then, one by one, they fell silent. They broke formation and retreated, their retreat a panicked, disorganized flight back into the sky. Kalen slumped to the ground, the resonator humming softly in his hands. The silence that followed was different this time. It was the silence of awe, the silence of a lesson learned, the silence of a new kind of power.